There's something. Bless you.
Okay, we're gonna get going here. I would like to call to order the Colonial Beach Town Council regular meeting Wednesday, June 16, 2021 at 6:01 p.m. If you'll join me for a moment of silence to follow the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have roll call of members. Everyone's present with the exception of Ms. Robertson, who is out of town today. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? No? Everybody all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Approval of the minutes of March 17, 2021, regular meeting, April 21, our regular meeting, May 5th work session, and June 2nd work session. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this?
I was fine with it.
Great, excellent. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, moving right along. Council member announcements. I will start with Dr. Salzone.
I just want to thank everybody for a great Tillamook River Festival weekend. It was extraordinary, and I think it's just a prediction of how good our summer's going to be, so let's keep up the good work.
Mr. Allison?
Just a couple things. The Parks and Rec Commission will have a work session Tuesday, June 22nd at 6 p.m. Mr. Duke also expressed that the Beach Ambassador Program is still available for signups for volunteers. So if you wanted to contact him directly for that, you can. And the putt-putt golf equipment was purchased and donated to the town. And that equipment will be moved to Eleanor Park within the next 5 to 7 days for rehab. So if any volunteers want to help rehab that, please contact Mr. Duke as well. Thank you.
Mr. Gable?
The only update is the comprehensive plan, Center for Regional Urban Analysis is on track with their timeline. They're planning on having it back to the Planning Commission and the Planning Zoning Director the week of 12 through 18 July for our our review and any revisions that we need to make to it before getting it back to them. So they're giving us at least 30 days as part of our timeline to review that, which I think if we've looked at it at the planning commission level, it may be beneficial for us to also allow the town council to see a draft copy of it before. I would like to push for that.
Okay.
Before it goes. All right, that's it.
All right, Mr. Bevin?
Yes, I don't have any real announcement, but I'd like to echo what Councilmember Seth Sullivan said. What a wonderful parade, fireworks and everything. It's a great weekend in the town. I believe that's a signal of better things to come this summer. Not better, but no more good things.
Mr. Montier?
We have one officer going into the academy at the end of July. Apparently, we have another one who's going to be hired, is already qualified, and does not need to go to the academy. We also have one in the queue for the October academy. Assuming everybody gets out, gets qualified, gets healthy, then we'll be up to full strength. Although I should point out that one of our officers is going to be out a couple of days due to injuries sustained in an arrest.
I would like to echo both of my sides here about Festival Weekend. What a fantastic weekend, and thank you to the volunteers. That's a lot of time and effort to coordinate that, and I really appreciate that. All of the time that they do. 70 years for that tradition is a long time, and I'm glad to see it keep going, and we're back on track since COVID. If you hadn't noticed, your water bill had a report in it this year, this time and last time. Last water bill, we started out with just kind of introduction, and this time it's a little more substantive, and I'd like to see that continue going. That is a collaboration of every single council member and staff. So, and I've gotten some good feedback on that. I think that's going well. So, good reach out. Pre-apps for VDOT funds are due July 1, so we're working on several pre-applications for VDOT funding. I had a presentation with the board of Downtown Colonial Beach to talk about the steps to get us to be a Main Street official designated Main Street program through the state of Virginia. We're going to still work on that, and DHCD is coming in August to meet with us. Tomorrow, I will be presenting to the entire state about what Colonial Beach is doing to become a Main Street and what our affiliate Downtown Colonial Beach is doing along with Joyce Reimer. And so that is a really great opportunity where we're going to get to showcase the town across the state to other towns, and maybe also catch the ears of some important funding. And then the Historic District has its state public hearing tomorrow at the same time. So Dr. Sullivan is going to attend that in my place, but that is en route to going official. And then we also met about the economic incentives in the town code with the EDC, and we are going to see a next draft at the next work session, but we're getting closer to a public hearing in July for that. All right, that's all I have. Town manager updates.
Sorry about that, we're sharing the mic. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and members of the community who are present today. India Adams Jacobs, Town Manager, will be giving my Town Manager's monthly report. Next slide. We'll start off with Community Affairs and Intergovernmental Relations, taking a look at a very important message. There is a temporary emergency shellfish area closure for Monroe Bay, Rozier Creek, Westmoreland, and affecting Westmoreland and King George counties. The Virginia Department of Health Division of Shellfish Safety announced today that a portion of Monroe Bay, as well as a portion of Rozier Creek, found in either Westmoreland and or King George counties, is temporarily closed to shellfish harvesting due to a sewage bypass impacting water quality in these tributaries. Due to potential microbiological pollution hazards, shellfish taken from the area affected by the emergency closure are currently unacceptable for consumption. The temporary emergency closure is effective for Monday, June 14th, 2021, and is scheduled to reopen effective Monday, July 5th, 2021. A map and a report of each of the affected areas is posted on the Division of Shellfish Safety's homepage at www.vdh.virginia.gov/shellfish/. The affected shellfish are bivalve mollusks, including oysters and clams, but not crabs or finfish. Next, we attended the Comro meeting last month. Most members of council attended that meeting, and we had some updates on the Nice Middleton Bridge project updates. If you take a look at the graphic, you'll see that that bridge is currently in stage 4 of construction. They are building the foundation and the piers. Steps 5 and 6 will happen in 2021 and 2022. That bridge is slated to open in the winter of 2022 and 2023, and then in 2023 and 2024, we'll see the deconstruction of the old bridge. To tag on to that, they are asking that we actually promote safety along that waterway. So anyone who is boating in that area, please be mindful of a 6-knot speed limit that is now being enforced in that area to promote safety for those who are working to construct that bridge. Next, I attend the monthly board meetings at the Westmoreland County Board of Supervisors meeting, and at their past meeting on Monday, they approved a number of items under their public hearing. One was a solar facility. The actual site will be 14 acres. It's a rather small solar facility, but they did approve that this past Monday. The board also approved transient occupancy tax rate of 3.5%. 2% of that tax revenue will go to the county's general fund, and 1.5% will go to tourism. This does not apply to any of us in the town of Columbia Beach or Montrose. They also approved joining the Chesapeake Bay Regional Cigarette Tax Board. They approved their portion of the first half of their American Rescue Plan Relief Fund. They also approved the lease of 2 parcels for a public park to be constructed in the town of Montrose. That lease is for $1 per year for the next 20 years. They took no action on the meals tax, and then they approved the ordinance imposing a cigarette tax at a rate of 40 cents. Next, we'll move on to town departmental updates. Town Hall will be closed on Friday for Juneteenth. I've had a number of people ask me what Juneteenth actually means, and so I'll give a brief history lesson as a nod to Walter. Juneteenth actually marks the anniversary of the day in 1865 when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation reached Texas, the last of the former Confederate states to abolish slavery. This was a pivotal movement and moment in the American history when all enslaved Black people finally learned that they were free people. Next, moving on to a Parks and Recreation update. We've had a number of questions related to security cameras. Cameras were actually installed during the week of June 8th at Torrey Smith Park, also along at the pier. We are working on signage to be erected at both of those locations. Moving on to Castlewood Park improvements. The restrooms are currently being remodeled. That's currently under construction. The estimated completion date of that is mid-July. As far as the park construction at that location, they're actually working on the bid phase to be set for August 1st, and the construction is slated to be finished by November 15th later in the year. There has also been a number of questions related to park signage. Working with Chris, who's acting Public Works Director, this week, he's been working on making sure that we get park signage that is uniform across all parks. Unfortunately, due to the signage being ordered and in place years ago, we're having difficulties to find one sign to actually match the ones that we currently have for Eleanor Park. So he's working with a vendor to try to get something as close as possible. Next, an update on parking. We, as you know, installed new parking meters about a month and a half ago and launched a new app. The Flowbird app is available for download at the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. There is a 35-cent fee for that, but it allows you to skip the lines. If you are a town resident, you can always come in and get your decals and skip that fee. There's also parking vouchers or parking brochures available at Town Hall. Parking vouchers and coupon codes will be shared later next week. We are still working on the vendor to get that information out, but as soon as we get that, members of council will be sharing that with affected businesses downtown, and we'll have those coupon codes to be in effect through the end of August. Going along with parking, working with Chris and Public Works, they've been working to repaint some of our areas downtown to make sure that it's a little bit clearer for those who are parking downtown. Blue will be repainted to designate for disabled parking only. Green will be allowed for the short time and for those 15-minute spots. Yellow will be for loading and unloading, and we'll be working to have all of those repainted arrows and crosswalks repainted downtown by the end of July. And then we'll be looking to have all of the red zones repainted by October 1st. Moving on to the central drainage area update. We actually got an update from Dewberry a little bit earlier in the week. You can see a rather detailed timeline here going back to when the project was actually noticed to proceed to the vendor, and then the project kicked off back in November of 2020. We actually have a meeting scheduled with them on Tuesday to discuss next steps, and Chris is here to talk a little bit more about that if there are any more questions. Moving on to the Robin Grove Living Shoreline project. The Deputy Town Manager, Rob Murphy, is serving as project manager on this project. The intent to award will be issued by next week, and we are working with the town attorney on a contract and intend to bring back to council for approval at the July meeting. Moving on to grants. Unfortunately, the town was not awarded the conservation easement for Eleanor Park. However, the next round of grants will actually be applying for that next round of grants, and that deadline is Monday, August 9th. So we'll be working diligently on that grant application. The next grant round consists of $7.5 million to be divided equally into 5 grant categories. So we're hopeful that we have another crack at the bat at that. Moving forward, there's another grant that we'll be working on for the Virginia Tourism and Marketing, which is due on Tuesday, that we're working on. And then the mayor alluded to the VDOT pre-application process that is due July 1st. So a lot of action on grants and a lot of movement on grants. Moving forward to an update on fireworks. I'd like to thank the chamber for helping to coordinate a great fireworks show last weekend for the festival weekend. Was really, really great and really well attended. I'd like to echo the sentiments of council and formally announce that there will be no town-sponsored fireworks scheduled for July 4th. Due to COVID-19, there was a decision to forego the 4th due to public safety concerns related to the governor's executive orders and our inability to secure a vendor for that time. Today, I'll be seeking direction from council on an alternative date. Some dates that have been floated around include Labor Day or New Year's Eve. So really looking for some direction from council on that today. And then following up on the last item, some good news on some funding related to the American Rescue Plan Act funding. The town of Colonial Beach will receive approximately $1.8 million. We have until 2024 to commit these funds. So we'll be working with council over the next few months to really prioritize the best way and the best uses for these funds moving forward. We are still also working with both the federal and state governments on providing guidance and working with our CFO to figure out how we can best utilize these funds for the town moving forward. And that is the end of my report, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
I just have a couple follow-up things. One, Chris, can you give a little bit more detail on the drainage area slide? Because I think when that particular problem set gets presented as drainage area, people don't understand what we're actually talking about. And so there's sometimes some confusion, but that is the bottom of Colonial Avenue. That is the manhole at the bottom of Colonial Avenue that we know when there was an enormous amount of rain that we had an issue down there, so.
So the central drainage area actually includes everything from from Gibbons, all the way down Washington to Boundary, to the boardwalk, and then all the way up to 7-Eleven. And there are a few extra outshoots from that we're tracing the sewer lines. And when we say central drainage area, we're actually talking about the sewer laterals, the sewer mains, and the sewer infrastructure itself, not actual drainage. So it's actually a very large portion of the downtown area that we're having to trace down and track flows, which way the water's going, which way the sewer's supposed to be going, and including all of our pump station data along with that going to Dewberry.
And you'll be within next week? Okay. So we can get another update on that next month as well.
Yes, on our July work session.
And then you want direction on Labor Day for the fireworks?
Yes, I'd like some consensus from council if it's the desire to move forward with trying to procure fireworks for Labor Day weekend, or if there was another weekend that's more desired.
Comments, suggestions, consensus? Yes?
Was choice between New Year's and Labor Day?
I think the choice is any day or Labor Day. Is that right?
Yes, there's been some discussions at looking at either the Christmas holiday or New Year's Eve holiday to activate the downtown from an economic development perspective and try to bring some more folks in town during the winter months. So that could be a day, but there's also been some conversation around Labor Day being a great way to kind of segue out of the summer, kind of celebrating the end of the summer.
Can we find a way to do both?
You all had identified funding for fireworks for the fiscal year for one set of fireworks. So I would recommend you make a decision on one date because they are $20,000.
I really like fireworks, so. Anyway, yeah.
You know, one of the things we've always tried to do is to hit our shoulder seasons for bringing people in. And Labor Day is typically still a very busy weekend for us. Isn't that the Arts and Crafts Festival weekend too on the boardwalk?
It didn't used to be. The Arts and Crafts Festival used to be in September, like 17th, like 17th and 18th. I don't know if this year if that's changed.
I knew at one point in time it ran over to the Labor Day holiday or whatever happened, so they
Okay.
extended it, but.
It's
Labor Day.
It is Labor Day weekend. I don't know why I thought it was the 17th, 18th. with Labor Day weekend.
But I was just, you know, I think it would be cool to have fireworks during the Christmas, New Year holiday as a way, an incentive, you know, another thing for people to do that come. I know a lot of our cottages and hotels fill up during that time. People come down between Thanksgiving and New Year's to spend a long weekend just to get away. I
So,
don't know if it would help or not.
okay.
So the other concern, or not concern, comment would be is, most of the school systems go back before Labor Day now. So like even Colonial Beach goes back the first week of August. So, you know, the summertime for most of the people that have children and stuff are gonna be earlier in the year than are typical, or at least my typical, after Labor Day school starting for my kids. So you may not have the people come because they got school the next day or, you know, on Monday and stuff like that. Just a consideration.
Anybody else? Point out when? Do we have to make this decision now? Do you need direction? We do need direction soon.
It would be best to have direction so that we can move forward with finding a vendor so that we can work through those timelines.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could we do this after public comment in case anybody that's here that wants to give their input?
I'll come back to it after, at the end of the meeting. How about that? Is there consensus on that? Okay. And then I did want to just remind people there wasn't any more information about the Dotson project, and I think people kind of expect an update about that. We did close on phase 1, which is the old school property, last month. That's done, signed, paid for, everything. They said between 6 and 8 weeks before we're gonna do like a groundbreaking moment, right? So just so you have some concept. Okay.
I had one question about the parking meters. And I can't remember where I saw it, but there was a comment made somewhere that if you tried to pay with your app, it wasn't getting through and police officers were writing tickets. Do you know anything about that?
That was brought to my attention today, but I'll be following up with the police department and the vendor to see what the issue may be. But that was the first that I've heard that today.
Yeah, it was the first I heard that too, and I have people that have paid with the app, but they didn't get a ticket. So I'm not sure if it was a one-time problem or if it is an actual systemic problem with the ticketing. All right, next up is our Westmoreland County Supervisor, Mr. Tribbett.
Madam Mayor, council members, good to see you tonight. Town manager talked so quick, I can't remember everything she said, but she covered a lot of things. We had 8 public hearings at our meeting and it was pretty long and she stayed the whole time. But anyway, so I may talk about a few things just in a little bit more detail than what she mentioned. The county did approve another solar farm and we haven't seen any of those encroaching on Colonial Beaches district yet, but the one we just approved was the smallest one we've approved yet. It's only going to be 14 acres and 2 megawatts. So I just see it coming, it seems like it's happening everywhere now. So to do these solar farms. So that's only be 14 acres on a 100-acre farm, and it's in the Montrose area. So, but I see that coming more closer to this area possibly. As she said, the county did add $1.749 million to our budget, to our revenue and expenditures. I just have to say that some people probably aren't very happy that the town's getting theirs directly this time. I've heard a few comments about that, but that's a blessing, as we all know. We thought about that for a long time, and so the county will be getting about $3.5 million more though, which would be around $6 million that they've got in total. So those funds have been coming in from the federal government. So we've added that to our budget in the county anyway. So I'm happy for the town that you're getting that. We did approve a transient occupancy tax, and that's for short-term rentals of less than 30 days. So that's for your Airbnbs and places like that. So that'll occur. We did approve the Chesapeake Bay Regional Cigarette Tax Board, as well as the 40 cents, which will be charged per pack. We currently have 4 counties and 3 towns that most likely will make up that board. And we'll do an MOU with the Board of Taxation to get those stamps or whatever is necessary. So once all those towns and counties do their public hearings and improve their ordinances, then that'll get going. And a lot of them, I think, have already done that. There was a proposed ordinance imposing a food and beverage tax of 5%. This wouldn't affect the town or Montrose, but it didn't get a second, so it didn't go any further than that. So anyway, that didn't pass, but I think the town already currently has one of those. Don't forget that you'll need to get a new hang tag to use the transfer station at James Monroe for trash, as well as the landfill. I believe that's effective July the 1st, is when you have to have your new one by. Normally you can just call them at the treasurer's office and they'll mail it to you. Tell them how many you need. So just want to remind everybody that. I know they're passing out a handout out there at the transfer station if you go there and you don't have your current one. The county did lease property to the town of Montrose for 20 years for $1. And they're going to build a new park right there. It's in the parking lot right next to the library, right there where the old sheriff's department used to be. And that's going to be a great use for that area, I think. It's just sitting there now. It's just an old parking lot with a few vehicles in it, and that's it. So that they're really excited about getting going with that. So is there anything at all that you have as far as questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
The transient occupancy tax, we already have one for the town. Is this going to be in addition to that one for all of Westmoreland County, or are we excluding?
No. Yeah. Anything that the county does like that is exclusive just to the county, not any incorporated towns. That would be up to you to adopt that.
I know we went back and forth on joining the cigarette tax board, but do you see it as a collaboration? It's on our discussion tonight.
Well, I do. I think it's going to, and at one time King George was going to be in it. And, but I understand they get about $4 million a year over in King George, as we well know, because a lot of people come from up north to get cigarettes there at those places on 301. So they've decided to go it alone. You do know that there's been a proposed 5% administrative costs, and that's for the board getting the stamps, enforcing it to ensure that everybody's utilizing them correctly. I don't see any negative. My understanding is the state, and having several people like a region handle that, where you don't have different people doing different things. The town's currently is 30 cents, I think. It'll be the same as the counties and the same as the regions as far as the tax goes, if you adopt that, to raise it to that 40 cents per pack. So I haven't seen anything negative about it. I know some people oppose it, but And, it's already out there. We probably have people that go to Halls and out in the county and buy cigarettes and don't buy them in the town. I don't see it, it could happen. But this way, the whole county will be on the same page.
And you guys are now at the 40 cents based on your public hearing on Monday.
Yes. And I don't think it goes into effect until July 1st. I think is when they're still waiting for some of these counties to approve the ordinances.
That's all the questions I have. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, next up is the Davenport Group with our debt service assessment and recommendations. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm Ted Cole with Davenport and Company. My colleague R.T. Taylor is here as well. We're going to both cover a section of this presentation. Everybody should have a hard copy. It's also up on the screen. And there are page numbers in the lower right corner. So we'll try to reference the page numbers as we go. Not looking for any action from you all tonight. This is just informational. I'm going to start on page 1, very high level topics for discussion. We're going to break the book into a couple of different sections. Primarily, we're going to first talk about the general fund. And when we talk about debt in the general fund, we're talking about tax supported debt for things like schools and governmental equipment. And we'll touch on a number of topics, your cash flow, your financial performance in the general fund, and your debt profile in the general fund. And then we're going to do much the same for the utility funds, water, sewer. So we're going to talk about your financial performance, and we're going to talk about various debt-related topics in the utility fund. We look at them separately. General fund, which is tax supported, utility fund, which are supported by users. And then we have a couple final topics. We're going to talk a little bit about the town's CIP program, or the capital improvement program. We're going to discuss some potential next steps, what might come behind this analysis and presentation, and then briefly share a potential refunding that you all have for some of your existing debt. So with that, for those of you that have the book, I'm going to go behind tab 1, a very brief introduction to Davenport and Company on page 4. RT and I are with the public finance group within Davenport. We are both work out of our Richmond, Virginia office. We have worked with the town in the past on different capital planning and debt-related engagements. Much of our work has to do with the capital side of local government finance. So it's planning for capital projects and helping local governments execute capital projects. Oftentimes, that involves the issuance of debt. And so we have worked with you all dating back as long ago as 2004, more recently assisting in the issuance of the debt for the school project. A couple more slides about Davenport on page 5. We are headquartered in Richmond, but and what we do with local governments, we kind of have a mid-Atlantic focus. We have about 30 staff that do what RT and I do. And then on page 6, you can see more specific to Virginia, some of our existing clients, counties, cities, towns, and other entities. We do a lot of work in Virginia and not, having worked with the town before, but also in the region. All right, so now we want to get into the real meat of the discussion, and I'm going to take behind tab 2, the general fund discussion. That picks up on page 8. Very high level, we wanted to introduce the concept of some financial policies. You all do have some policies, particularly related to your fund balance in the general fund. You have a fund balance policy. As we go forward and we start talking about capital planning and we talk about the potential to issue debt, we believe there may be an opportunity to expand some of those policies that really helps you all in your planning effort. What we have found to be most effective is that policies are established or revisited as we're looking at a capital improvement plan. So we're not setting policies in a vacuum, and that they are brought to the elected body for discussion and adoption. So everybody has buy-in. And as we talk about a capital improvement plan process, those policies can be revisited on a regular basis. Again, you have a reserve policy or a fund balance policy. Other areas you might consider is cash management and investments, debt, budget, and capital improvement planning. Okay, very high level. Page 9, key takeaways, and you'll see the detail of this in a moment. For the general fund tax supported debt, we've looked at a 5-year trend and time back to your audits. Over the last 5 years, your general fund revenues have grown by a little over 4%. Your expenditures have been relatively flat, and you have been in compliance and then some with your fund balance policy. So what does that look like? If you flip to page 10, I'm going to talk off of the graph. Again, what we're looking at here is fiscal year 15 through fiscal year 20. You can tie our numbers in the table back to the audits, but let's look at the graph for a moment. The blue line represents your general fund revenues. So you can see, particularly in fiscal 19 and 20, there was a step up in those general fund revenues. Among other things, I think that was tied to a real estate tax rate adjustment or increase. The bars themselves, the dark green portion of the bar are your operating expenses within the general fund. The lighter green portion is the debt service within the general fund. Again, that's largely school-related debt. And so in fiscal year 15, 16, 17, and 18, you will see that operating expenses and debt service were higher than revenues. You can also see that in the table on line 16. You all were operating with deficits in those years. Operating expenditures, including debt service, were greater than revenues. But in 19 and 20, you can see it graphically, or you can see it on line 16. You sort of reverse that trend. And you are now sort of what we refer to as structurally balanced. Operating revenues are greater than operating expenses and debt service. You can see that on line 16 for fiscal 19 and 20. And as a result, you have been adding to your fund balance. So a lot of the hard work has been done over the last few years to put your general fund on better, more firm financial footing. The trend is excellent. This is through FY20, so the period ending June 30 of 20. We're obviously about to wrap up FY21. The audit won't be out for some months, but our understanding is very preliminarily, and we've seen this across the state, FY21 has been generally a very good fiscal year for local governments. There have been sales tax activities and other things. Don't know what the results for FY21 will be for you all, but I think the general expectation is that things have been trending in a positive way. So again, the takeaway here is things have been done and the general fund has moved to a much better place financially. We're going to wrap this discussion up with what do you all think you might want to do in talking about capital projects going forward, whatever they might be, schools, utilities, what have you. And sort of as we were digging into this with staff, and we've gone through a few drafts of this with staff, certainly struck us that it's a very reasonable conversation for you all to be having. What do we want to do for capital projects? You know, if you were still in a mode where you had operational deficits and you were using reserves year over year, I don't think we would have that same sort of opinion. But what you've done starting in 19 and 20, I think sets you up very nicely to have these conversations about capital planning and capital projects. I'm going to flip to page 11. This gives you a little more detail on the fund balance. The upper left, you can read your fund balance policy. That does show up in your audit. It says that you want the unassigned component of your fund balance. Fund balance, according to accounting standards, can have lots of different, or they have different buckets of fund balance. The unassigned fund balance is the component of your fund balance that you all have the most discretion and control over, least amount of outside restrictions. Your policy says you'd like that to be at 15% of your budget or greater. You can see it in the graph in the upper right. The green line is above the red line policy, so you are in compliance with that policy and then some, particularly so starting in 19 and 20. Kind of ties back to what we discussed on the prior page. The cash flows are in a much better position. You had been pulling reserves down. You're no longer doing that, and you are very comfortably above your policy. Again, I think it sets you up nicely for discussions about capital planning. It obviously creates a buffer to deal with unexpected events, additional reserves, makes the town a better credit from a lender's perspective. There are a number of different benefits. So again, a positive trend there. Talk a little bit about tax-supported debt on page 12. You're going to see your debt service, your annual payment for general fund or tax-supported debt is very flat year over year. There are not a lot of declines. When the town issued the debt for the new school, that really took much of the decline in your debt profile off the table. We sort of levelized the payment. We were in a mode where we were trying to secure the funding for the project and minimize the impact on the budget as best we can. So what you're going to see is your annual payment for debt service for the tax-supported debt, not utility. Tax-supported debt is about $600,000 a year, and it's going to remain at that level or close to that level for several years. In order to service that debt, you are dedicating approximately 13 cents worth of tax revenue to debt service. So approximately 13 pennies of your levy is going towards making those debt payments. All of your debt is paid off by 2046. Flip to 13, you'll see it graphically on the left. It is the debt profile. Everything we're looking at is on a fiscal year basis. So you can see those green bars go out to 2046, and you can see our payments are a little above 600,000 now. They step down a bit over the next few years, a little more in 2036, and then they're flat. And so the point here is, I think, as it relates to what might you want to do in the future for capital, there aren't any real big drops in your debt profile that create an opportunity for some other project. That doesn't mean you can't go and borrow money. It doesn't mean you don't have debt capacity. What it means is if you're going to issue new debt for whatever purpose, tax supported, you're going to need to find the revenues to service that debt. There's not a nice step down, and that's just primarily a function of the fairly large school project that was funded a few years back. So that's your annual payment. You got about $9.5 million outstanding that is tax supported debt. And on the right-hand side, you can see by fiscal year, your principal payment, your interest payment, and your total payment. Okay? Page 14, quickly. As we move forward, if we move forward and start talking about projects that might need debt, and keep in mind, capital improvement projects may well be funded with cash, reserves, outside funding like ARP funding and other sources of funding, or debt. And as we move forward with that discussion, as I said at the beginning, we may want to talk about putting some debt policies in place. What page 14 is showing you, I'm not going to get into all the math because I'm trying to keep this at a very high level. We usually look at 3 different key debt ratios. And when we show you on this slide those 3 different ratios, we're looking at how quickly you're amortizing your debt or paying it back on the left. We're looking at the amount of debt outstanding as a percent of your tax base in the middle. And we're looking at your annual debt service payment relative to your total budget. And the blue shaded area is the policy range that we believe is a reasonable range for a local government. And the good news here is the debt you have on the books today, the $9.5 million, you're paying about $600,000 a year on that. A reasonable range of a policy, if it were established, you would be able to demonstrate compliance with that policy, and you would still have some room within that policy to consider additional projects if you wanted to. So we talk about debt capacity and we talk about debt affordability. They are related, But for capacity, we look at it and say, if we were to issue more debt for whatever reason, this is on the tax supported, could we do so and still have a strong debt profile? And the answer would be yes. Now, not unlimited, but you certainly are not at a place where you have overused debt or overextended the town. It is a very reasonable conversation for you all to be talking about capital planning, some of which might include debt. And if you were to want to discuss policies, I think you would find that you could establish good policies and still be able to have the opportunity to fund projects with debt. That doesn't mean it's affordable, right? There's debt capacity and debt affordability. The second part of that discussion is how do we pay for it? I'm going to skip a couple of pages here. Page 15 and 16. The key takeaway here again is you have a debt profile that's relatively flat going forward, only modest declines. You're paying for debt service in a sustainable way. The equivalent of about 13 pennies on your tax rate goes to debt. So you have demonstrated that that is a sustainable budgeting practice. You have debt capacity. We know that financially the general fund is performing better today than it had historically. And so I think all of those things line up nicely. And we'll circle back to this at the end to start having a discussion about capital planning. I'm going to ask RT to come up. He's going to talk about utilities behind tab 3.
Thank you. Again, my name is RT Taylor. I'm with Davenport. If you could turn to page 18, again, bottom right-hand corner for the page numbers. A lot of this section is going to look very similar to the general fund section, so I won't belabor each page, but just want to go through just real quickly. Similar to the general fund, the utility fund, when the credit markets are looking at an entity, you're trying to look and evaluate and assess the financial health. Big picture here is that the utility fund looks like it's in good shape, just like when the general fund management is doing what you can to raise rates and perform well financially, as well as position yourself to potentially take on future projects. So page 18 basically gives some high-level overview of some of the key credit factors that those credit markets are looking for. Again, looking at historical performance, liquidity, and are you performing those financial projections to stay ahead of those either budgetary needs from an operational perspective or capital perspective. Page 19, just a couple quick observations. The utility fund is doing well. The revenues are increasing year over year on an average annual basis of approximately 5.5%, while expenditures from the operations side are remaining relatively flat to 1%. Again, page 20 is going to look very close to the general fund side. And again, the blue line is tracking revenues, dark green is tracking your operating expenditures. In the middle there, that light green is your debt service. So all things point to good. On page 21, again, your performance on the utility fund is tracking very well. And again, just introducing the concept of some potential policy ranges that may be in discussions during the capital planning part of the process. You're in good shape from that perspective, in good position to have those conversations about doing some capital projects. Page 22, the debt profile for the utility fund, again, different from the tax supported side. This is the side that is supported and paid for by the water sewer system rates. Again, you do have some decline on this side of where you have that, again, potential to fold in new projects within, call it the current budget levels. So that's really a quick high-level summary of the utility fund. If you could turn with me to tab 4, just to give a quick overview of the CIP part of the process. As Ted and I have spoken to, y'all are in good shape, both from a tax-supported side and a utility fund supported side, to have the conversations about folding in capital projects. And the way to do that the town may want to consider looking at a multiple of years, whether it be, up to 5 or 10 years of a layout of projects by fiscal year. But then coming back annually around the time you're doing your budget and say, okay, what are we going to fund in this year's budget for capital projects? And how are we going to fund those projects? Are we going to fund it through our reserves, pull down one-time monies? Are we going to use having a surplus this year to put those operating surpluses toward the projects? Are we going to get grant funds? Are we going to get ARPA money? So are we going to have to finance some of these projects? And that's all laid out in that capital planning part of the process. So on page 24, that addresses some of those, the setup of the multi-year capital planning. One other thing that we like to consider when we're modeling up and helping develop this process is, okay, we're going to build the bricks and mortars for a capital project. So there goes the capital expenditures. What does that potentially have in the way of an impact to our operating budget? We're going to need more people to man the building or have these programs at this building. That's going to potentially increase operating needs, right? So that's one of the other things we try to evaluate and assess as part of the process in those discussions. If you turn with me to the next page, this is again going over the capital improvement planning initiatives. It gives a little flow chart about setting up that process and what's required. Identifying the projects, assigning priorities to those projects, and the timing, which fiscal year, and how best are we going to be able to manage how many projects over the next couple of years. And then for each of those years and each of those projects, what are our funding sources? Again, grant monies, reserves, ARPA funds, some type of stimulus funds, or finance. On page 26, this is the current year CIP going into fiscal year 22 for the town. And this, as part of our next steps in working with the council and working with staff, this is where we want to work together to refine the timing and sources in order to implement the identified projects. Okay? With that, I'll turn it back over to Ted.
Yeah, and so we'll wrap up. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind tour through governmental finance, but we really appreciate it. The next steps behind tab 5, we've covered these. I mean, as you all are evolving, I understand there's an economic development retreat this summer, obviously council retreat, comp plan is being unveiled. Maybe it's just a very opportune time to revisit capital planning. As RT said, what we normally see, and there are variations, is a multi-year capital plan. It might be 3 years, might be 5 years, that is reviewed every year. It's adopted as a plan, but it's usually funded year by year. So you're funding 1 year at a time. But the 5-year forecast, for example, gives you opportunities to better plan for future events and future needs. So as you all evolve on this and you start talking about capital projects and the desire to understand, the affordability of the projects, what impact might it have on our budget? Again, whether it's tax supported or utility supported, I think we have gotten to a place where we have a very high level of comfort that we're in a position to sort of move to that next phase, if that's something you all want to take on at some point. And as I said earlier, both in the general fund and the utility fund, a lot of the hard work has been done. Both of those funds in the last 3 or so years have been turned around, so to speak, and you can see that just in the cash flow and the operational surpluses or structure, and you're beginning to add to reserves, or at least you're not pulling down reserves. So I think the opportunity is there to do some more refined capital planning and potentially move forward on certain projects. But it's up to you all whether that's a priority on the general fund side, the utility side, what have you. The last thing I'll leave you with is behind tab 6. We've covered this with staff. This is a very high level, it's page 30, very high level of a potential refunding opportunity. Remember, the general fund has about $9.5 million of debt outstanding. The utility fund has about $9.5 million outstanding. So as a town, you have about $19 million of debt outstanding, but it's made up of lots of different loans. These 6 loans we've identified as potential candidates for refunding. They were done for different purposes at different times. The way we have run this is we've assumed a potential participation in one of the state bond programs called Virginia Resources Authority, or VRA, in the fall. So this is not something that would be able to happen next week or next month, but I think it's something worth keeping our eye on. If you go over to the far right, you'll see in the aggregate at the sort of top under column H, we're talking about $6.5 million worth of debt. Remember, you've got as a town about $19 million of debt outstanding. So about a third of it. And as you go down that line, you'll see some of the key assumptions. And what we are estimating is that there could be savings over the remaining life of these loans of about $280,000. So there are savings there, reasonable estimate. I don't think it's a game changer from a budgeting perspective, but I think it's something to be mindful of and perhaps pursue as we move forward. And the other thing I would note is in running this analysis, we have not assumed that we're extending any debt or shortening any debt. If the debt's going to pay off in 10 years now, if you were to refund it, it would still pay off in 10 years. And you'll notice there are some loans missing, like the new school loan that was done more recently. It is not prepayable yet. We went through a state program for that bond. It had a 10-year no prepayment covenant to it, which is very standard in the bond market. So 2024, 2025, I suspect there'll be an opportunity. So this is not all of your debt, just a portion. Stop there. You may well have questions, or do our best to address them, and certainly can be available to come back as you all would wish, if that would be helpful.
I'm gonna open it up to council. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but that was very helpful to your analysis of all of this.
Thank you.
No questions, but thank you very much.
Well, we've met several times now, so I appreciate all the work that you put into this, and also in, kind of bringing that level of financial detail to my understanding. And the situation we're in right now is a good place to be talking about capital projects, which is the main point, I think, take away from that. And that's something that we're interested in doing. And I think getting that capital improvement plan from being a wish list to being an actual funded item list is the goal, is the next step to take from this point. So hopefully you'll continue to work with us and give us guidance on getting there on that as well.
Great. Well, we appreciate it. We'll stick around for a little bit if there's any follow-up questions, but thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, citizen input. Oh, okay. We got somebody else signing up. My guess is I bet I do who's first. We're gonna try to liven it up. Everybody awake out there? Okay.
We'll wait.
Yeah. Oh, right. Citizen input, we'll start with Walter. 3 minutes to speak, and I do hold you to it, and I thank you for your time.
This is going to be a history lesson. It's on the school. The school was in existence in 1912 until probably until the end of the Korean War. And that's when Old Road and Colonial Beach went to all the students at Colonial Beach went to Old Grove. And when Old Grove closed in 1959, Colonial Beach says they weren't going to bus the students to Westmoreland, W&L. They're going to bring back the students back to Colonial Beach. And that's when the elementary school was being built. Ralph Hall built the elementary school back in the 60s. We went on a split shift. The high school went from 7 in the morning to 12 o'clock. And the elementary school went from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And, you know, we did that for a year and a half, you know, while the elementary school was completed. And that's the conclusion of my history lesson for tonight.
Thank you, Walter.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jim Green, 12th Street. I want to talk to start off with about the regional cigarette tax and joining that regional cigarette tax board and the adding of the 10 cents per pack. Honorable Mayor and Town Council, I take a look at this as far as ordinances 715 and 716 go, and I have to be honest with you, I read it through a couple of times, and it really smacks of more of like a sin tax, or more of like somebody trying to say, you're doing something wrong, so we need to socially engineer you back into the right place. And it targets a specific group. This is an effort to coerce smokers to stop smoking, using a 10% per pack increase as a hammer. It's not the council's job to tell people not to smoke. It's legal in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Actions like this could lead to a really slippery slope. And what I mean by that is, what's going to be next? Is it going to be alcohol? Is it going to be alcohol? Is it going to be ice cream? Is it going to be soda pop? Is it going to be guns? Is it going to be ammo? Or is it going to be, you know, fireworks? What are you going to try to do next? There's at least two problems with this tax idea. One, the most important one to me, will adversely be affected by the tax for people with lower incomes, because they're more likely to smoke. And the products that they buy would be less affordable inside the town. And a lot of these people don't have the ability. I'm going to be driving because I'm a smoker. I have no problem driving over to King George. I stopped there today at the 7-Eleven and stopped here today at 7-Eleven, and it was $11 difference even before the tax goes in, the price for a carton of cigarettes. I'll tell you who's looking forward to this tax increase and you guys getting on this regional board. That's every cigarette vendor that's over on Route 301 in King George. Joining the regional cigarette tax board and increasing the taxes is not good for Colonial Beach, and I honestly recommend a no vote. I understand raising taxes 10% would possibly, on the cigarettes, would possibly get the town $8,000. Well, the buy-in or the cover charge to be part of the regional board is $4,000. So what we're really dealing with here is $4,000. You're probably going to lose some of the money that you would have gotten revenue because people are going to go elsewhere. And one thing that is, if you do vote for this, you can probably hold up your head and say, we raise taxes in Colonial Beach on nicotine addicts and the poor. Okay. Next one, linear park. Conditional support. I conditionally support this. I think that it's good to have a fancy walkway. The titles on the priority list, as far as the town priority list goes, there's two titles on there on page 4, lines 24 and lines 25. One of them being Bikeway Greenway Park, line 24, and Parks in north side of town, line 25. If,
Mr. Green, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay,
I
thank you very much.
appreciate it, Thank you. Ms. Williams? Paige?
Hi, Paige Williams, 1535 Irving Avenue. First of all, on a positive note, I enjoyed the new town manager's update. It was, I don't know, it was just refreshing. I don't know what it was, something in the air, I don't know. But anyway, I just have something to say, very short and sweet, not really long tonight. Something that she mentioned. Now that the Eleanor Park easement grant proposal ranked almost last in the overall ranking, I think it's time for the town to do something different. Listen to the residents. Since there are new developers interested in purchasing the land, town council should use this opportunity to put Eleanor Park on the November 2021 ballot. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Good evening, Town Council. David Williams, 1535 Irving Avenue. Tonight, I'm going to touch upon what Jim started talking about with the linear park. I'm not sure if I agree with it. I don't think I do. The concerns I have with the linear park is, have the people on the north side actually been consulted about this? My concern is that that's not really what they intended when they said they wanted a park on the north side for the last, 15 years or however long it's been. So I would urge the town to actually speak to the people, maybe put out a survey. If you wanted to make use of that water bill that goes out monthly, maybe you could put something in there asking them for their opinion. I also have a concern, I thought, and I could be wrong, that pathway might be turned into a road at some point. Emergency egress or something. If something happens on Route 205, how could people actually get through there? Emergency crews and stuff like that. There needs to be some kind of a road in there. So I think that should really seriously be considered before we apply for a grant for that piece of property. And also, I have a concern. I agree with my wife about the updates. I think that was great from the town manager. I do have a concern about the announcement of that broken down putt-putt equipment that's sitting over there by Suki being moved to Eleanor Park. I have no idea what that's about, but it doesn't smell good. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Director Montalvo?
Hi, everybody. First, I have to say to the members of the previous council that still remain here, thank you. It was because of the previous council and previous town manager that we actually achieved fiscal solvency. So all of you are inheriting this, and please continue that path. Colonial Beach has had rough times. It's time to keep the spending low and looking for a brighter future with good infrastructure projects. Before I start in my topic tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the grant writer. So what I want to say about that is I'm not opposed for the town to grant an award, a contract award for a grant writer for 1 year. You can take $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 and pay for a grant award for 1 year. But please, money will run dry after 1 year. There's not much money in the United States left. And there will not be that much money, even though we think that Santa is coming every year. So if you hire an employee, you will need to have at least between 25 or 50% of additional benefits. Plus, you will have that employee possibly until he or she retires. And there will not be probably another use for that employee after a couple of years. So please do not hire the grant writer. And what brought me here today is in this podium, 2019, June, where, yes, Mayor Schick, you stood here September talking to the council as I am doing today, asking the council for a moratorium on Eleanor Park and telling the council it has to be the will of the people. Now today, I'm using your own words. This should be the will of the people. Let's put this on the ballot. We have a developer that's willing to front the money. Let's do it. Let's ask the people of Colonial Beach what they want to do with Eleanor Park, and let's make it happen once time forever.
Okay, Ms. Mack?
Hi, Susan Mack, and I am the facilitator of the Alliance of Colonial Beach Community Organizations, and I'm speaking on their behalf today. As a reminder, the Alliance has the following participants in our group: Abraham Cooper Memorial Library, BAM, CB Artist Alliance, CB Artist Guild, CB Chamber of Commerce, Colonial Beach Churches, CB Civic Organizations, CB Community Foundation, CB Community Garden, Colonial Beach Gardeners, CB Green Space, Colonial Beach Historical Society and Museum, Colonial Beach Humane Society, the Colonial Beach Performing Arts Association, Colonial Beach Public School PTA, the Rescue Squad, River Dogs, Colonial Beach Village, Colonial Beach Volunteer Fire Department, Downtown Colonial Beach, Guadalupe Free Clinic, James Monroe Birthplace, WWER 88.1 FM. We also work in collaboration with the Colonial Beach Planning Commission, the Colonial Beach Public Schools, Colonial Beach Tourism Commission, Colonial Beach Town Council, Flag Shack, and Colonial Beach, the Town of Colonial Beach. With a plethora of state and federal funding opportunities, Colonial Beach has the unique opportunity to access dollars like no other time in history. For example, pandemic-related support via the American Rescue Plan will provide municipalities with $7.2 billion for infrastructure projects and $6.6 billion for education-related programs. Colonial Beach must be a contender for these and other dollars. We will need an expeditious yet measured approach with citizen feedback and transparency to help define what economic development means to and for Colonial Beach. The Alliance's organizations represent and advocate for our children, history, animals, seniors, residents, entertainment, tourism, arts, religion, emergency services, businesses, and more. It is with their internal customers in mind that at the Alliance meeting held on 6/15/21, participants unanimously supported the town moving forward on economic development initiatives, including defining what economic development in Colonial Beach encompasses, the hiring of a grant administrator, and the eventual hiring of an economic development director. Thank you.
Mr. Mack?
Good evening. I'm Brian Tremack, 1541 Irving Avenue, and just a couple of quick points from myself. Approximately a year ago, we had several instances on the south side of town with people getting stuck on the beach, and in order to prevent that, no parking or stopping signs were put up, and boulders were put up in order to prevent vehicles from being able to get on the beach. And It's my understanding that since that point, one of the citizens has petitioned to have all that taken down. And to a certain extent, I can understand that. The parking signs were fairly ineffectual. People continued to stop and unload, blocking traffic and causing safety problems for pedestrians and other vehicles. And but the boulders were extremely effective. At the time that those were in place, no more vehicles were able to access the sand and get stuck on it. The boulders were eventually taken away very recently, and within 48 hours of those being removed, a vehicle was stuck on the beach because people seem to think when there's access that they're more than welcome to drive on the beach. I'm unable to understand that, but that's what happens. I understand that there's a survey coming out in order to get the opinion of the citizens, and I think that's awesome. That's outstanding. It's exactly what we need to do. But I think something that was mentioned earlier in reference to the parking markings, the paint markings, one of the quick and easy things that could potentially be done as just as a forethought is when the red paint is being used to mark other areas in town, a red line could be done along Irving. And quite potentially along Monroe Bay as well. I'm sure there's some areas in there where they're having some issues with that as well. And although that doesn't necessarily keep people from driving on the beach, it does give a good visual reminder that this is not a place where you're supposed to park. There was great enforcement by CBPD this weekend. We definitely saw them out there and talking to folks and shooing away people that were parked on the beach, etc. And as far as, that's all I'm gonna do about that. As far as a linear park, I know that's not the end all be all of all parks on the north end of town, but it's a great place to start and we can get some great funding for that. I think that's a great inroad into having another park in the north end of town. And as far as Eleanor Park is concerned, surveys upon surveys upon surveys have been done in reference to what should be done with that property. The town has been asked, people have put their input in, and I think we've already been moving in a decent direction with that, moving the putt-putt course there for the purpose of refurbishing it, not for the purpose of leaving it there necessarily. I think is a great thing. It's a big space, more than enough room to be able to spread that out and take care of what needs to be taken care of with that. Thank you for your time.
All right, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Thank you, Council. Mike Fitzpatrick, 401 Ward Street. First of all, just a comment on the fireworks, since I think you kind of asked for some discussion on that. I honestly think it would be great if we did it on Labor Day weekend as well as a winter festival. I'm supportive of that both. I'd be happy as my representative capacity for the chamber to go back and see if the chamber might be able to support part of the Labor Day, because it does overlap with the Boardwalk Festival, which the chamber sponsors. So just wanted to go on the record for supporting both of those activities. Next, I would like to congratulate the town on the announcement about the recovery money. That is absolutely phenomenal. And as you know, I've been attending these Virginia Economic Development Association workshops, and I think this is only the beginning of the money that's going to be made available from what they've indicated, and that there's an equal amount that's coming on behalf of the schools. And so tying in with the Davenport presentation that we heard this evening, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for this town to get together behind our economic development strategy, decide what these capital improvement programs are going to be, and tying in with what Susan just said. You heard the entire list, and I've been attending these meetings the last few months as the representative from the chamber. I can tell you it's one of the most effective forums that I have ever seen in my 24 years in Colonial Beach in terms of bringing this community together across all aspects. And everybody is pointing in the same direction, with a few outsiders maybe, but I'm telling you, I have never seen everybody working so well and together and working for the common good and cause of this town. And it's a phenomenal opportunity that's like the perfect thing going on with this money that's coming from the Recovery Act to get our act together, improve our infrastructure, revitalize our downtown, set the stage for the school, and really put Colonial Beach on the map. So I am completely supportive, and I continue to strongly disagree with Dr. Lissette. This is not a 1 or 2 year opportunity. In my capacity as Economic Development Director for the Chamber of Commerce. I have spoken with jurisdictions across the Commonwealth over the last 6 months, and I can assure you that they all are saying, why don't you have an economic development director? Because there is money year after year after year that this town has never taken advantage of, and that we will continue with the right investment in this town, with a grant writer and an economic development director. We will be able to have this as a continual flow of additional income that we have never had before. And that's what I'm going to say on that. Just on maybe a couple of quick things, that the trolley is starting July 4th. I wanted to let everybody know that that will be back on track again, in case you didn't know that. Personally, I would have liked to have known about the alert for the water system. I think we send out announcements and alerts across the, to everybody's cell phones for certain things like storms and whatnot. I think this contamination of the water would have been good. I had 7 grandchildren in Monroe Bay swimming, kayaking, jumping off my pier today, and I didn't know about this. And we've been eating crabs off of our dock. I would have liked to have known this. So I think that's something that probably warranted going out as an alert to the town, just an FYI. And finally, on the linear park, I think I heard during the campaign how important it was that we improve that path, because there's dangers with 2 golf carts trying to pass, and there's a number of disabled people that live on the north side that use that as their ability to get into town. And a number of people spoke to me and said, please do something about that path. I don't think the park is necessarily what this is going to be. I think it's an improvement to a path to make it a nice way for people to safely get from the north side to the south side, and should not take the place of what should be a full park on the north side of town. Thank you.
And then, just to be clear, the shellfish moratorium is not applied to crabs or swimming. So you can swim, just so you know. Swimming and crabs are okay. All right, Ms. Reimer?
Greetings. Joyce Reimer, 204 Bancroft, speaking as a private citizen today on the relatively light matter of the fireworks. This is probably not going to help with the decision making, because I think they're both good ideas. And if the fireworks were held on Labor Day in conjunction with the Chambers Arts and Crafts Festival, I think that might help with participation, getting vendors, and also help with attracting additional crowds to buy from those vendors. So I think that's very positive. If it was at the end of the year, perhaps it might be combined with a first night Colonial Beach, which could be a great fundraiser for somebody and bring a whole lot of people into our downtown to enjoy our restaurants and pubs and performing arts and art and so forth. On another matter related to Eleanor Park, I was having a conversation with somebody about the rising price of real estate in Colonial Beach. And I sort of have mixed feelings about that. We've got a tight inventory, we need housing, et cetera. And she was saying, but I think it's just going to drop precipitously at some point. And so I've given a lot of thought to that, about real estate in Colonial Beach hold its value. And I was trying to think, what is it that helps real estate hold its value here? Now, of course, proximity to Washington is one. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought nature is what helps support the values of property in Colonial Beach. People just like to be in a natural setting. So while I really encourage us to pursue additional housing for modest income people, rental development, and high income people, I don't think it should necessarily compete against something that contributes to the property values of everyone, which is our beautiful natural setting. Thank you.
Thank you. have signed up for citizen input? I did 3 minutes, Paige, I'm sorry. We'll be back every 2 weeks. All right, moving on to new business. Resolution 22-21 amends and appropriates FY 2021 budget, water and sewer funds, debt proceeds for the truck. Lisa, you want to walk us into this?
This is a budget amendment to.
Thank you, Davenport, very much for your presentation. I look forward to continuing to work together.
This is a budget amendment to bring in the debt proceeds that we received to purchase the new jet truck. We need to make this resolution in order to put it on our budget in order to be able to spend it. So we have gotten the money and we're purchasing the jet truck, and we are also in the process of the grant money that is associated with this has come in, and we'll have that resolution for the July work session.
Okay, so there'll be a couple more related to this.
There'll be the
coming.
one more to accept the grant money into the budget. Unfortunately, there was a hiccup on USDA side. It was supposed to come at the same time, and we discovered there was a hiccup, and they have now got it to us. It actually came in today.
Everything else is in compliance on that, though, we're.
Yes, yes.
Did that jet truck look nice in the parade?
Yes.
All right. New business, so, okay, do we have a motion for this? And then we're gonna have some discussion. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this? No, just kind of keeping clean house. Okay, great. I'm gonna mix it up this time, keep you on your toes. Oh, you out of it?
On this, I know some of the concerns before about the jet truck was how it was maintained and the previous jet truck we had. I've seen it now probably 5 times in action out in the town, and the crews that are operating it, using proper procedures. They are safe the way they're using it. They're using it as it's intended to be used. They keep it maintained, they keep it clean. They've met all the expectations that when Mr. Moncur and I went to Public Works to go kind of dig into this, we were assured it was going to be taken care of, and they had a plan for doing it. They started their plans for maintenance programs, working with vendors and contractors that we get the vehicles from. I think this is just a good sign that they have done what they said they were going to do with a new jet truck, and I applaud Public Works for how you've handled it and how you're working with it. I appreciate it.
And on that note, we also made sure we put money in the budget for repairs, a better repair and maintenance budget for Public Works.
Any further discussion? No? Mr. Moncur, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Duggan?
Aye.
Mr. Cabry?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
And Ms. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Okay, these next two, items on our list, the ordinance 715 and 716, we'll talk about them separately, but these are just draft ordinances, so I want to make that clear, we're not voting on anything tonight, this is just a discussion and an introduction to this. So we'll start off with tab B, which is the amendment, Article 9, cigarette tax, 2, increasing the rate. This is the rate increase to 40 cents from 30 cents. And Ms. India Adams Jacobs, you want to read us into this one?
Sure. As the mayor mentioned, this is related to the cigarette tax board establishment, and I will turn it over to our town attorney who has drafted the ordinances and will give a little bit more background, and then I will follow up.
So in tab C, the ordinance amendment, it really amends and restates your ordinance with respect to the cigarette tax. It does include the rate increase, but it also includes an amendment of that chapter to incorporate the regional board as well. So it impacts it. Then those are the main changes, the rate, but also to incorporate the participation in the board, the regional board, should you so desire, with that enforcement component.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
This will have a public hearing, right?
It'll have a public hearing in July. I prefer to schedule public hearings on ordinances at regular meetings, not work sessions. I like to talk about it at least once beforehand if it has to do with changing the town code. I mean, it's something like a, regular financial, process, that's not as big of a deal, but I think when it requires public comment, it should be talked about first. And I'm planning to put it on the regular July, which the boards, the regional boards are all going into effect August 1st. So July, that meeting would be the last opportunity to actually get on the board.
I will point out, also the draft ordinance in front of you is consistent with the region. So, I mean, the idea behind the amendment, because if you weren't going to join the regional board, you really don't have any need to amend your ordinance. So this is consistent and looks very much like the others in the region, so that everybody's sort of working together.
I think part of the, and I think Ms. Jacobs can explain this better than me, but part of the reason for joining the board, my understanding is that we are foreseeing that the state is going to mandate a higher level of enforcement equipment on this thing, and that it's a sticker right now. The tax is a sticker that's on the bottom of the pack of cigarettes that says TOCD on it. And that with other forms of tobacco products coming out, e-cigarettes, other types of products that are kind of innovative, a sticker may not be a reasonable way to allocate the tax anymore, that there could be some technology involved in this, rather than the sort of more simplified way that it's done now, which is just that little sticker. And that if that technology gets implemented and mandated by the state, that then localities that have a tax are gonna have to comply with that technology requirement. And so that's why they're encouraging boards to form, so that meeting those requirements is then divided among a regional sense instead of just in a little town like Colonial Beach. So if they say, hey, you're gonna need a scanner gun, you're gonna need a computer program, you're gonna need registration for, your cigarette vendors and things like that, then while we make, I think it's $40,000 on cigarette tax, I think it's
about 80.
$80,000 in cigarette tax?
80.
Okay, that's right, it's $4,000 and 5%. $80,000 on the cigarette tax. If we had to put all that technology into it, and then we had to put that kind of staff time into it, all of a sudden, we're not really spending that money. And not, that's, it's not as easily administered as it is right now. So, that seems to me to be why the encouragement to the board to a more regional aspect from the state level.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. That was a great summary. And initially, the board or the state's legislation really speaks to strongly encouraging for regional collaboration where appropriate. And they are really modeling off of the Northern Virginia board, but they're encouraging regional boards throughout the state. So our regional board would have a uniform sticker for now and a uniform stamp. And then also really streamlining the processes into one fiscal agent so that when that money is sent to the state, that it is then sent back to the localities in a uniform manner so that it can be tracked and audited and things of that nature. And I actually have Adam here tonight who actually handles our process internally. And we both have met and talked with Mr. Davis at the planning district, who would be serving as kind of the point of contact on this. And then the planning district would really serve as the fiscal agent moving forward to kind of administer this program regionally. And based on my feedback and my discussions with some other localities and Mr. Davis, the intent is for King George to also raise their tax for 40 cents. So regionally, everyone will be at the same level. So maybe there will not be as much of an incentive to drive across because there's a 10-cent cheaper tax rate, a couple miles away.
You
So
spend 10 cents on the gas.
that is a good point.
Just saying, as a rate, right?
But yeah, if Adam has anything to add, this would be great.
Yes, actually, King George doesn't currently have a stamp. They are currently implementing a stamp July 1. I've actually gone through their office, or helped their office actually set it up. So they do not have a stamp currently. It has been approved for them to have a 40-cent stamp, but they are choosing to do it on their own.
So it is gonna be 40 cents in King
It
George.
is gonna be 40 cents.
Westmoreland County is gonna be 40 cents.
Yes.
Northumberland County is gonna be 40 cents. Lancaster is gonna be 40 cents.
Yes.
Callio, Warsaw.
Yes.
Kilmarnock, Montrose.
And to reiterate the point about King George, they have a number of cigarette outlets, which has incentivized them to establish the program and work with Adam, who's kind of been their point person to really help establish. But they've hired a part-time person in their Commissioner of Revenue's office, as well as hired bought a deputy sheriff's vehicle to actually go out and enforce, and then they bought all of the machinery to do it themselves. As Mr. Trivett stated earlier, they project about a $4 million revenue off of their tax, off of the revenues associated with their cigarette tax sales. So because they sell a lot in volume, it definitely incentivizes them more to establish their own program and not go with the regional board at this time. But smaller localities and other localities who do not sell that amount definitely see it as being advantageous to join the regional board. And in order to give Adam a little bit less off his plate for $4,000 for someone else to administer, I think would be a great use of town's resources and time.
You're in favor of it?
I agree. And just being part of the board, I think it's a good thing to have us. I think it's a good thing just to have us a seat at the table. So anything that is talked about, we at least have an idea what's going to happen.
Part of it is the relationship with our neighbors too,
It's very true.
and helping to form that, enforcement.
And the fact that we've been doing it for so long and no one else.
You're gonna be like the president of it.
I mean, nobody else really does it. All the other places are starting it.
Right.
But we've been doing it for 7 years now, 8 years.
Yeah.
So I still think it's a good thing to be a part of the board.
I don't see any downside to being a part of the board. And definitely, I think our taxes should be the same. I don't think we should be 10 cents cheaper than everybody else.
I agree. I think staying 10 cents cheaper, we're not subsidizing anybody on anything, but right now Virginia has the lowest price per pack of cigarettes in the country. We're already at the lowest level. I mean, affordability, if you're talking about affordability. And then I believe that our community, our makeup of our community is very similar to every one of those communities around us that are on board with this. 40 cents for a pack of cigarettes, a tax. If it's consistent across the board, and especially I went on King George's website this morning or this afternoon, and they said it's going to 40 cents. So I don't see our population moving over there to go grab it, but I also don't foresee people coming across from Maryland and then going another 10, 15 miles to come down here to get our cigarettes when they can get them at King George. I don't think we're losing that clientele, honestly. I do think that with the cost of roughly $4,000 to join this, the board, as has been addressed both by Adam and by our town manager, time is money in a lot of cases. And if you are then trying to outfit your organization with the vehicle, additional personnel that are going to be, even if they're part-time, you have exceeded what we would save anyways. So I see no downside to either aspect of this, of these resolutions.
And one thing
Ordinances.
I can add is everybody was so afraid when we first implemented the cigarette tax that people were gonna leave. Nobody left. Our sales stayed pretty much the same.
Really? They stayed the same.
Our state sales tax remained pretty much the same when we implemented this years ago.
Yes, I had heard that before from people, that everybody was gonna leave and go buy their cigarettes at Halls, but convenience matters.
Yes, it does. And everybody said that, well, I'm not gonna buy gas here because I'm not gonna buy cigarettes, but nothing really changed.
Nothing changed.
Everybody still bought gas, everybody still bought cigarettes, everybody still bought food at 7-Eleven.
Okay.
And I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that at some point, if this became so cumbersome or so costly that it became, the need would arise for us to remove ourselves from the board, we would just have to give 60 days notice. So we could do that at some point in the future, later down the road, if the council desired.
Okay. If you do the quick math, and we raise the rate from 30 cents to 40 cents, on the $80,000 we receive right now, we make approximately $106,000, which gives us a $26,000 increase. We're paying 5% back to the regional board to be a part of this group, which is $5,000, so it's a $20,000
Correct.
more.
Roughly.
Right. It's the quick math. I didn't have the real exact numbers. Okay. I mean, I originally was, as I think other localities were, hesitant to join the board. I mean, there were several towns that were not on board with this in the very beginning, but we didn't know all the details of it. We also didn't know, we didn't have as much clarity about what was coming down the road with this stuff. And I think as that's coming forward, it's made a difference. And I think the relationship with being a part of the board with the Northern Net Planning District Commission and along with the county is a positive place to be at the table. So I like those things. It seems positive. So my mind's been a little bit, I wasn't necessarily sold in the beginning on this.
I wasn't either.
Okay, this is just discussion for today. Is there any further discussion on this point? Well, are we gonna direct to have a public hearing on this in July? Is everybody on board with that? Consensus on that? Okay, public hearing in July for both. All right, resolution 23-21, authorization for audit services. And this is a renewal of their contract, is that right? Excuse me? Renewal of the audit? The auditor.
We had a 3-year contract signed in 2018 to do the next 3, so they did it to 18, 19, and 20. And it also had a 2-year option on that, so we didn't have to go through the RFP process again this year. And we decided to take that 1 year, the first of the 2-year options.
Yes, there's formally an engagement letter that is both addressed to the mayor and myself. So based on the amount, we need formal direction to do that and then sign that so that we can start the audit services as they're slated to come in town on the 24th and 25th to start that process.
We're gonna have an on-time audit this year. Yeah. I'm gonna be your cheerleader.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion? No? All right. Mr. Capri?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Duggan?
Aye.
Mr. Moncur? And Dr. Sullivan?
Aye.
Right. All right, website options.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the first items I think we spoke about as I started my tenure as town manager was starting with a new website process. We have a website that is less than user-friendly, hard to update, difficult to navigate, and it's a really bad user experience for most of our residents and people who visit. So we work internally, both Heather, myself, Maggie, and I think Susan from Flex Shack, on looking at various demos on our website options. We've had some proposals and just seeking direction to move forward with the process. Money was allocated from the FY19 contingency and kind of earmarked to be held over for this process, and we don't anticipate exceeding that $32,000 mark, but because of procurement, we need formal direction from you to move forward.
Okay. I just want to highlight some of the things that have in the website conversations that we have, and I've been on, I think, 2 of the presentations that we saw from different companies. But one of the key things that we want to focus on is citizen engagement from the town side. What as a citizen, do you search for when you go to our website? What is important to you? What would make your life easier if you could do it online? And I know that's not for everybody. I know that there are lots of citizens that the website is not where they want to go. They want to go in person and they want to see a person that's very important to them, and they need to do it that way. That's good too. We need to have good service there. But the world we live in now, especially the post-COVID world we live in, having online services can increase the way that somebody's personal lifestyle is. It makes it an easier experience there. It's going to stop a lot of problems from starting. And if they can get things done online and they don't have to come in the office, they don't have to worry about when we're open and when they work and when they can or can't get here, they're going to have a better quality of life. So we want to automate more processes online. We want feedback. I know a big part of this website redevelopment is feedback from the citizens about what you need from a website, a town website. So there'll be engagement, I think, in that aspect. That's really important as a part of this conversation. I personally use the website probably every day in my role, right? And it's extremely frustrating. It's not great. And so I think a part of it is indexing, which, Heather knows, having better keyword searches, engaging in that so you can find things from before. But also processes forms that you could just fill out and do online and submit it and be done. And it would make your life easier. So we want to do some things like that too. I don't have any issue with the direction to, we want to direct the town manager to move forward on procurement of this, negotiate a contract and sign one. Is there any discussion on that?
One question.
Yeah.
As part of this, and I know I'm not involved in writing up or anything like that, but is there an element to this where we can have our own trained person to work the website and doing any of the manipulation that needs to be done, as opposed to go back to a website owner? And then with that, does that mean that we pay for the training, or is that included in the cost to give people, more than one person, the training to be able to update the website or to maintain the website?
So to your first question, yes, we would have training as part of that implementation process, and that would be included in the cost. Also, one of the benefits with going with, more reputable website vendor who does this kind of nationally would be that you always have customer service support for any of those things. So it would be our intent to have someone actually trained in every department so that we're not relying on just one person to make website updates. That would be part of that goal. And was there another part of your question?
No, really, you cover both parts. One, does the training come with it, the training package? And two, will we have the flexibility, the autonomy to do things on the website without having to go back to the vendor and tell them, we want it to do this, and then it becomes a back and forth, and your update doesn't get posted for 3 weeks because...
Absolutely, yes, it would be immediate based on all of the demos that we had.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's essential that we be able to post things easily and quickly to get them out there. The second point I wanted to make is this is not just important to our citizens, but from an economic development perspective. Any business that was looking to relocate to Colonial Beach is going to go to the town website, and they're going to judge us on how well that website functions.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I would agree, and I would also add that a part of this will also be integrating the new web applications as it relates to our new Esri system with our GIS, and then integration with our work order systems with the new City Work system that will be actually put in place a little bit later this year.
So what that means for the public is maps. There will be maps available on the website that you can look and see overlay districts and things like that, your parcel numbers, your floodplains, your tree canopy, your a million different types of information. Maps will be available on the website. Another part of that means public works. You'll be able to submit a work order and see it in a schedule. That's the plan. Where's my work order in the 150 things that we have to do in Clinton Beach? What priority is it? What schedule? Estimated date? Are they coming out? Okay, are they coming back out? You know, so better understanding with our public works and that system. That's, you know, she used a bunch of acronyms to sort of make sure that I understood what the acronym stood for. Okay, any other? No? Okay, do I have consensus to direct the town manager to negotiate and approve a contract for our website?
Yes.
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 Yes, consensus, yes. Any nays? No, excellent. Moving that forward. Okay, direction, we're coming back full swing. Fireworks, Labor Day weekend or Christmas? I still say, why can't we have both?
Funding.
Okay. Money. Can I fundraise for a second one?
I think if Mike made, I think he said that he would work on partnering with the chamber to split the cost. If the chamber is willing to do that, I think that if we prioritize Labor Day, then we potentially could look at a mid-year adjustment for Christmas if necessary.
I like that idea.
I also like the idea of, the chamber's been, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the chamber has been scheduling and organizing the fireworks for Potomac River Festival, and that they do that pretty well. Is there any reason why we couldn't work with the chamber and have them do the scheduling and
For Labor Day?
the prep for Labor Day, and in conjunction with their festival?
I think that I can reach out to Kerry and see if he's willing to do that again. I think they did an awesome job, and I would love for them to take over that item for Labor Day as well, if they're willing.
That would be fantastic. Also, I think just to clarify, because sometimes I see some confusion about this, the town pays for both sets of fireworks. The chamber does not pay for any fireworks. However, they do coordinate all the process of it for the festival. And they do obviously do that very well. So I think engaging them to coordinate the process, it's another collaborative thing. We'll prioritize Labor Day and look into a collaboration maybe for Winterfest, Christmas, something in that time frame.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm for prioritizing Labor Day first.
Okay. I'm good with that. Okay. All right, does that give you some direction on that then?
It does. Do you have any preference on Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday? All right, Saturday it is.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no need for a closed meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, wonderful. It's still light outside.
It's still
I know this one.
For the red alert.